It's the greatest podcast in the history of the world.
It goes high up and under the full forward. Mackey's taken a ripper!
He has a bounce, he crosses 50, he pins the ears back, and he drills the goal!
All the latest news and views from around the VAFA.
Here's the big man!
Big goal.
He's done it again! This bloke extracts some of the finest from outside the arc. It's a long bomb from outside the arc!
This is for the love of the game.
You can tweet that and hashtag it bloody good.
Hey everybody, welcome to For the Love of the Game. Jason Bennett alongside Matthew, Donald and Brayden May. Gentlemen, round 4. Gee, we had some great footy again this weekend.
Yes, we did. Hello to you, Jason, Brayden. Hello to everybody tuning in. So many great stories across all the divisions really this week. Some really good, some real close finishes and some last gasp winners.
Some massive comebacks.
Yep, some terrific comebacks. It was a weekend that had just about everything.
Yeah, good morning everyone. It's really exciting weekend. A month gone already and I just can't predict what's going to happen next. Like we were speaking last weekend that we've got two top teams that we'll touch on in a second, but they've been brought back to the pack. It's shaping as an exciting competition, and I think it just goes to show why the VAFA is the most unpredictable in Melbourne.
So round 4 of William Buck Premier Men's will start there. 3 of the 5 matches took a late turn and no undefeated teams, no winless teams left a month into the season. That says it all.
That's what you want. The evenness of all the competitions so far this year is a great thing to see. And certainly the Premier Men's division, again, some really good stories. And the fact that anyone can beat anyone on a given day is exactly what you want.
And that's exactly what it showed us again and reinforced on Saturday. And we'll start at Brighton Beach Oval, which proved exactly that. In our match preview last week, we mentioned that Uni Blacks versus Old Brighton was top versus bottom, but it felt like probably the closest top versus bottom we might see all year. That Blacks were a much, much better side than that, and they historically give Brighton problems. They were the last team to beat Brighton down at Brighton Beach Oval all the way back in round 17 of 2023. A 20-game winning streak, but that was snapped by the Blacks on the weekend in thrilling fashion. The Blacks also beating Brighton in the middle of last year. Our special guest, James Clark, to join us in just a moment, but we'll just talk you through the game very quickly. Very little between the two teams in the first half. The Blacks were actually winning the territory game in the second quarter, kicked 2-1, and it was 8-point lead to Brighton at half-time. They then ramped up the pressure. They got out to 26 points in front, got to 29 entering time on in the third term. And then from there, you were expecting, certainly watching the scores, that Blacks were going to run away with the game, but it wasn't to be the Brighton were going to run away with the game rather, but that wasn't to be the case. Blacks came rocketing back. It was a fantastic performance. And joining us now is their star midfielder, James Clark. James, welcome. Thanks for your time. Congratulations on the win.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me on.
We spoke about Blacks last week, and we even mentioned it in the match preview to say that, hey, you guys might be one of the better 0 and 3 teams we've seen. You actually played some great footy in the first few weeks. You just hadn't been able to put it together for the 4 quarters. Heading into the game on the weekend, is that how you guys were feeling about how the season was panning out? It wasn't as bad as win-loss suggested?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely did think along those lines. Obviously, footy's a funny game and sport's a funny game. We just didn't probably start the season, obviously, how we've wanted to in terms of how we've played the game. We think that we've had, obviously, quarters that have been very competitive, obviously against Haylivery in the first round. And then, obviously, the 2 weeks against Blues and Trinity, we had moments, but we just couldn't put that 4-quarter performance together. So we really set ourselves a task on the weekend to obviously go down to Trinity, and we know how much of a good side they are and how tough they are at their home deck. So, it was a great win for the lads, and puts us back on track a little bit.
So heading into the Brighton game on the weekend, obviously you guys were the last team to beat Brighton down at Brighton, and you beat them last year as well. Some teams just seem to match up well against others. You guys obviously have confidence that you can take on the Tunners and do what others can't.
Yeah, absolutely, Jace. I think that every game we do think we're competitive, no matter who it is or regardless of the opposition, the players they've got in or players got out. So, I honestly believe that on our best day, we can beat anyone. And as I mentioned before, they're absolutely quality outfit and really well coached. But I think that, when you combine the 22 players that you got on the field and everyone just gives 100%, they're the type of outcomes that can come as a result of it.
When they ramped up the pressure in the third quarter, they kicked 3 goals in 6 minutes. Archie Manton threatened to blow the game open. Suddenly it's a 26-point game after it had been pretty close. We've seen this script so many times down at Brighton before. They put teams away. What was going through your mind at that stage?
Yeah, honestly, that was a really testing time for us. Obviously, the last couple of weeks, we've kind of faded away when teams have got a little bit of a momentum. So as a midfield group, we kind of looked at each other and thought, this is our time to really show here. As I said, Brighton, a quality team, and we know that they're going to continue to come. So it was just about stabilising that period of time, and there was a little breeze. So we did obviously find to get three goals into the breeze before the 3/4 time, and I think that was huge and just so good for the group to show that we can fight through adversity against quality opposition.
3 goals in 7 minutes at that stage.
Yeah.
That certainly flipped things around.
No, and that breeze can be very strong. So anything into the wind is always a bonus. So to get 3 in rapid fire time is a big deal. James, congratulations on the win. Curious, because you mentioned at 3/4 or that you were going to have the breeze in the last term. You only trailed by 11 points at that stage. But it's one thing to have the breeze, it's another thing to be able to make the most of it. What was the message from Dal Bauer at 3/4 time, and what did you guys execute so well in that final term to get over the top of the Tunners?
I think it was literally just completing what we've just done the previous 10 minutes in that final, in that 3rd quarter, the back end of the 3rd quarter. It was, Dale was really simple with us. He just said, continue to play the way that we've been playing. We found that obviously our contest and pressure, things along those lines were pretty good for the first 3 quarters. And we just knew that Brighton were just going to continue to come. So we just was like, let's go out there, let's have some fun, let's be attacking, because we know that we need to put up a score to win.
Did you guys go into that save the game mode? Archie Manton kicks his 5th at around the 24-minute mark. You guys can go on to kick it behind a goal as well. Was the message internally just from the midfield group when you went back to that centre bounce? We've just got to keep attacking because if we try and save the game, it might hurt us.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a little bit of a combination there between saving the game and obviously trying to put on a bit of a score. Obviously, that the last couple of minutes, Sam Conway, who's had such a good year coming from obviously where he VFL, he was just trying to keep it in close for us mids, and then it was our job to obviously keep it in close, and then where we could, obviously execute and try to put on a score. But yeah, it is can get a testing time.
I think it was 6
in those last couple of minutes.
It was 6 minutes, I think you had to hang on for at the end there, James. It was a 2-point game at the 28-minute mark. It went 34 minutes. So the last 6 minutes of the game without a score, you guys were just hanging on grimly, defending for your lives. It must have been an enormous relief when that siren finally went.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. I think that last 6 minutes felt like an eternity out there, to be honest. But a special shout out to away making. He was absolutely incredible. And he even had players from the opposition go up to him and congratulate him on the quarter and game he had. So without him, I dare say that we probably would be on the other side of the ledger.
You had a pretty decent final term yourself, 11 touches and a goal. Tell us a little bit about a couple of the new faces. You mentioned Sam Conway, Zane Cordy as well. Tell us about some of the new faces for those that haven't seen the Blacks in action this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Zane Cordy, coming from the Bulldogs, has been such a great asset for us, not only on the field but off the field. He's brought in so much leadership and guidance, and obviously he's done it at the top level. And then now is just bringing so much experience to us as we're still a relatively young group. And then you've obviously got a kid like Paddy Smith, who actually is older than me, but from Cobden. I didn't know much about him, but honestly, he's been first class in the middle, and he really takes the brunt of it. I'm probably a little bit on the outside more than he is. So no, we're pretty lucky the calibre of players that we've got this year, and that's why we definitely think that we're a real challenger. And obviously the start of the year didn't start how we wanted it to, but I think definitely when everyone comes together, and we have had some injuries, that we can put some sides away.
Another 21 touches and 7 clearances for Paddy Smith, who has just been absolutely outstanding, as James mentioned. So this week, you head to the Snake Pit to take on St Bernard's. What are you expecting?
Oh, the same thing as I always expect at St Bernard's. Obviously, very tough competitors. They're always willing to show up, and their supporters are always out on the sideline. So we've got another task at hand, and I think it's just about continuing now this momentum and not being satisfied with one win. This is on us as a leadership group to take this club forward, and we want to be playing finals this year, and these are the type of wins that we need to complete.
James, thanks so much for your time. Congratulations on your form. Best of luck for the road ahead.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
So Old Brighton retained top spot on percentage. We'll talk about the ladder in just a moment. But now it's a four-way race at the top with Brighton, Zabs, Blues and Trinity. Just another twist and turn in the tail. We knew Brighton weren't going to keep winning forever, and that streak was eventually going to get broken. But, 20 games in a row. What did Marcel Bruin have to say about that? Because they've defended that record pretty bravely for the last, almost 3 years, 2.5 years of footy without a loss at home.
Yeah, well, he acknowledged that it was tough to see the streak brought to an end, but 20 games in a row in any venue was a phenomenal effort. But paid credit to the Blacks that it was a thoroughly deserved victory for them. They showed terrific intent and they brought great pressure right across the course of the game, and gave credit to Dal Bauer and the team for being able to change things up in that second half, get the game on their terms, and then come home with a wet sail in that last quarter. He noted that Josh Carr was very good against the ruck and in the ruck battle, and then Harry Hill, obviously always a very good player through the midfield, but just not enough winners on the day for the Tunners.
And from a Dale Bauer perspective, you must have been thrilled.
Yeah, just hard fought all day. When Old Brighton had the lead, they just continued to fight. I think that was the key theme. They could have rolled over and they just kept coming. I think that's what the Blacks have been known as, just a side that's just not going to go away. One of those oppositions that you probably, if you're a supporter of the team that's in front, you're just thinking, when are they going to come there? We want a comfortable win, but you're just not going to get that. Spoke about guys coming back. Match fitness is something they've had interrupted preparations, and now that they've got those guys with that match fitness,
there's some
really
big names amongst that group too.
Yeah, Cordy, Clark, Grogcut, Drummond, Paddy Smith, Jace, that I know that you're a big fan of as well.
Huge fan.
It's just good country football, which is just a great result. And as James touched on, they're just so happy and they're willing to put their expectations out there, which I love.
The day's other stunning comeback saw St Kevin's also, as coincidentally, turn a 29.3 third quarter deficit into an incredible win over an undefeated team. Exactly the same scenario that happened at Brighton, but this time it was at Melbourne Uni Oval as they came back the Scob and shocked Uni Blues. Just 2 points separated the teams at the first two changes. There was very little in it. It took until the 11-minute mark of the third term for the margin to actually hit double figures in this game, and it came off the back of a couple of Uni Blues goals. They were doing all the attacking, and then up came the two-headed monster as always, Grimley and Stewart. We see it week after week. They kicked 3 goals in 5.5 minutes, that pair. And it seemed to be happening once again. The Blues suddenly out to a 29-point lead, entering time on in the third. And as we said about the Brighton game, we've seen this movie before. It was about time that they powered away. But Scob, to their credit, refused to go quietly. They kicked 3 goals in 4 minutes. It was back to 10 points of difference at the final break. And then Jack Bent kicked a goal. Doug Kerr, who's been a fantastic recruit for them, kicked another one. They kicked 5 in a row by that stage, and they regained the lead at the 9-minute mark. The Blues came back. They took the lead. Sam Tucker then took over. He kicked the last 4 goals of the game, Sam Tucker. He had 1 goal until late in the third term, and finished with 6. That's a fair back end of the game. He kicked 1 late in the third term and then 4 in the last quarter to finish with 6 goals. So a remarkable 52-point turnaround from the 21-minute mark of the third quarter. 52-point swing. Scob booted 9 of the last 10 goals. 5 of them came to Tucker, including the last 4 of the match. So they went from 29 points down to ultimately win by 23 points. Huge comeback win for St Kevin's. It squares their ledger at 2-2. They sit 5th, 1 game behind the top 4. They'll prepare to visit Caulfield Grammarians while the Blues will dust themselves off. And what a blockbuster this is going to be. They're going to host Old Zabs this weekend. So from a St Kevin's perspective, Anthony Lynch, Plugger, must have been absolutely thrilled.
He was, and he said about the first half what you said just then, that it was a really even first half. Both teams really cracking in, and given the conditions, are still playing the game in the right way. But paid credit to his boys' ability to be able to dig in against a very strong opposition when things were looking a little dicey in time on in the third term, but they continued to take the game on and continue to really go hard at the footy. So he was very proud of the way that the team played in the end. Very pleased now that they've been able to deliver back-to-back performances. Really good win against St Bernard's the week prior, and then a good come-from-behind win against Uni Blues at the weekend. And also wanted to shout out to Cam O'Shea in his milestone game, which is a phenomenal achievement. He wanted to make note of that as well from a Blues point of view.
So that's a couple of massive comebacks, and we'll talk about another one in a moment, another really tight finish. But it just goes to show, Brayden, in modern footy where teams can get on a roll, but then they've got the ability to also flip momentum as well and have the team that's struggling suddenly just hang in there and keep fighting and find a way to win. I mean, that's 2 teams that have come from 29 points down late in the third quarter to win.
Yeah, and I don't think 5 goals is a big margin anymore, because with the new ball up and straight, if you've got dominant ruckman like St Kevin's doing, Billy Coates, he can just jump over the top of his opposition. When you've got the quality of that midfield and both forward lines, we've seen that they can score quickly. I think it makes for a much more exciting footy, and it really makes the coaches think, how can we get a bit more defensive, whether it's a man behind the footy or do we just roll it number up at stoppage. So it comes down to a lot of that. And Matt Smith said the game was actually lost at contest for Uni Blue. So that's a area that they've been really strong in this early in the season. Like we've spoken of Matty Gleeson, he's gone in there and added some size. Cam O'Shea was in his 100th game. They called the man Fridge. He's obviously always a guy you can rely on at half back. Max Irving fought hard all day, and he gave a shout out to Joe Furphy as well for his great battle in the ruck with Coates. So yeah, and he just said they're a good team, and at the end of the day, if you're off 5%, you're going to get beaten by these quality sides around you.
Yeah, so Old Trinity played its first William Buck Premier Men's home game since 2022. It turned out to be a last gasp thriller against St Bernard's at Daly Oval. Tees led by 4 points at the first break. They then seized control early in the second term. They kicked 3 of the first 4 goals, got out to 16 points in front. Then kicked a couple of late ones as well. So they were 26 points up at half-time with the Tees, despite having had 2 fewer inside 50s and just one more scoring shot, because the Dogs, very inefficient in the opening half of football, weren't hitting targets by foot at all. Their disposal efficiency by foot, I think, was around about 50%. They were just turning it over a lot, and then around goal, they were a bit messy as well. They were pressing the Dogs early in the third term. Couldn't quite put all the pieces together, though. It just wasn't quite happening for them. Dan Gillam kicked a goal 9 minutes in. Then they just kept fighting. Again, exactly the same as we've seen in the other 2 games. They kicked 3 of the last 4 goals of the third term, got back within a couple of kicks at three-quarter time, then kicked another couple and hit the front at the 13-minute mark of the last quarter. So they, too, had come from the best part of 5 goals down. And from midway through that last term, the lead changed 4 times in the next 16 minutes. And it went all the way to the wide. Charlie Comer kicked a brilliant goal at the 28-minute mark, came thundering out, gathered, wheeled onto his right boot and launched it from long range. That put the Tees back up by 1 straight kick. Straight out of the middle, went down the other end for St Bernard's. It was an amazing kick from the pocket. It bounced at right angles, straight into the arms of Marcus Holland in the goal square. He kicks a goal to make scores level again. It looked like it was heading for a draw. One last roll of the dice for Old Trinity. They bombed it long. Dom Payman marked 40 metres out on a tight angle. Any score to give the Tees the lead. He went back and absolutely nailed the set shot. Could not have hit it any sweeter. Straight over the goal umpire's hat to give Trinity their 3rd straight win with the final kick of the game, consolidating their position inside the top 4. Dom Payman finished with 5 goals. It was a wonderful performance from him. They've won 3 on the trot now, Old Trinity, and they're searching for a 4th straight win when they host Old Haileybury, while the Snow Dogs will head to the Snake Pit to host Uni Blacks in a critical game for both teams. So Trinity, 3 in a row, that is a fantastic performance. But having said that, Old Haileybury jumped out of the blocks last year in exactly the same position. And for these teams that are coming up from Premier B, great to get those early wins. Critical they get those early wins on the board, Matty, because it is a very long year for teams that come up to the top tier for the first time in a while.
Yeah, and the point about banking the early wins, I think, is really critical, because if you're a side coming up from Prem B, regardless of how long you've been down there, the first priority point of business should be make sure that you avoid relegation, consolidate your spot in Premier A. So banking these wins now is great, because then you're avoiding a situation where you've got to win 3 of your last 4 come the end of the season, and you've actually established a bit of a buffer between the chasing pack at the end of the season. So to get these wins early, particularly in really close games, those sort of line ball 50-50 ones, to be on the right side of the ledger is a good thing now, because it can save you an awful lot of stress come the end of the season.
And unlike the other 2 games, team came from a long way back, but Trinity were able to steady and win, which says a lot about their mental capacity.
Yeah, especially against sides that are, I guess, on paper, looking ahead before any games were played this year. Everyone would go, they're probably better quality just because the players have been at this level before. And then the Tees as well, they lost some experience as well. And that's what I'm loving, the emergence of some of these new leaders, some names that might have not been seen as leaders, but gun footballers, but they're learning on the job as well. And these sort of pressure moments, like when St Bernard's, that score is level again, it could have easily been, oh, we're in trouble here. And then we're talking about the Snow Dogs walking away with 4 points, but instead they're like, no, we know how to win these games, and they've gone and got the job done. And Donald McDonald, I don't know where he ranks in terms of the top local footy coaches, but he would have to be in the top half a dozen right now, I think, with how he's got his side performing.
Well, 3 in a row, and when you think their first loss, their only loss was round 1, and at the time we thought, oh gee, that's going to hurt Trinity. But in hindsight, Uni Blues are an exceptional side, and they're going to put some teams to the sword this year. So they've lost to Uni Blues after Stewart and Grimley got hold of them, and then they've strung together 3 in a row. So, as you said, Donald McDonald's put together a pretty good program in a short period of time here over the summer to lift them from Prem B to Prem A. What did he have to say after this one?
Just said it was a tight game all day, and they were leading at halftime, and in general play, it was just tight. It's probably a word that we're probably sick of hearing right now, but just the ability to keep going when St Bernard's were playing well and their momentum swung, and we've seen that all through this opening month. Games are just swinging back and forth. He was really pleased with that aspect, and he just Don Payman, he gave him a massive shout out. What a player he is. He's terrific, and it is fantastic when you can see him at this level, but it's also fantastic when we see him at high levels. He's really keen to recover well and go up against Old Haileybury, the side that you mentioned that they're almost shadowing at the moment.
Yeah, just got to keep that momentum rolling, don't they, for the tees. From a Steve Alessio St Bernard's perspective?
Yeah, well, he noted Old Trinity's ball movement in the first half was really slick, and it gave him a pretty good indication that they'd have a game on their hands. St Bernard's managed to turn it more into a contested style of game in the second half, and that allowed them to get back into the contest, keep the ball trapped in their forward half for longer periods of time. But on the day, the conversion in front of goal was what cost them in the end. And in close matches, you can't afford to be missing the sort of opportunities that they did. But noted that the season continues to spring surprises. So that as long as the Snow Dogs can just keep hanging in there, things have the ability to turn very quickly for them.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's a very even season. So Old Haileybury collected another 4 vital premiership points with what turns out to be a comprehensive victory over Old Scotch at Princes Park. Matty, you were there for that one. The Bloods struck first through Jack Bell. Then the Cardinals looked like they were on. They kicked the next 4 goals, including 3 in 2.5 minutes, and they looked like they were ready to blitz. They were more efficient up forward early. They were a couple of goals up at the first break, and then Old Haileybury started to take control, and they looked threatening up front. They kicked 5 goals to 1 in a 19-minute patch that saw them come from 11 points down to 14 points up. They kicked another couple early in the third term, made their move, held the Cardinals goalless in the third quarter, added another 4 themselves, 32 points up at three-quarter time, snuffed out any hopes of a comeback with an early goal in the last term, and then kicked the first 4 of the last quarter, got as much as 9 goals up, and in the end went on to win comfortably by 43 points to square their season at 2-2. They remain within a game of the top 4. Cardinals now 1-3. What did you make of this one?
Yeah, this was a really interesting game. The start from Old Scotch was really good. They got out to a couple of goal lead at quarter time. Between the second and the third term, 10 goals to 2 in favour of the Bloods.
Why?
They really flipped the switch. They were just able to win it out of the middle a bit more. And certainly in the first term, Old Scotch were winning the clearances and getting it forward. But I think what Old Haileybury picked up on was the fact there was a really muddy sort of surface. So they were just trying to get it forward any way that they could. And we sort of touched on it earlier. Centre clearances, you can get the ball out of the centre quickly. It gives you plenty more chances to score. And I think Old Haileybury picked up on that a bit quicker than Old Scotch did. They got it inside 50 quicker and with a bit more purpose. It allowed them to get on the end of some good opportunities at goal. Flynn Gregor at half forward was very good in the air. Took a couple of nice marks, kicked 4 goals, and had the celebration of the day as well to bring up his 4th, the backflip.
18 touches, 4 goals, and a backflip.
Yeah, that's I don't know how many fantasy points a backflip is worth, but no, he was very good. Brady Sackle was tremendous through the midfield. We've gone Hugo Higginbotham has gone with the Baby Bloods as opposed to the Baby Bombers, and Brady Sackle's the Tim Watson.
Well, remember Guy Watson? Guy Watson. You just Watson. Guy Martin dubbed them the baby Bloods here a week or 2 ago, didn't he? Because he knows just they're such a young emerging team. A lot of excitement there and a lot of youth, but then guys, as you mentioned, like Seckle, that are just so important, that senior figure that just sort of pulls it all together. He had 27 touches, 12 of those contested, 8 tackles, 11 clearances, 8 inside 50s and 2 goals. That's a pretty complete performance.
Oh, no, he was outstanding through the middle. And it wasn't like Old Scotch didn't have opportunities. You mentioned that they didn't kick a goal in the third term. They kicked 7 behinds. In fact, there was a point in the match when both teams, I think, had traded about 7 behinds in a row. And it just felt like whoever was going to get the next goal from that point was going to break the game open. It went the way of the Bloods. I think Old Scotch kicked 9 behinds in a row. At one point from the start of the second half until early in the last term. And when you don't make the most of your opportunities, can come back to bite you. And we've already seen that in the case in a couple of games so far that we've gone through in round 4. And that was another one that really cost them that inability to make the most of those chances.
Sets up a couple of fascinating games this coming week. Old Haileybury will head to Old Trinity. So the league's 2 most recent Premier B champions, both on a winning streak. They'll come together head-to-head. That's going to be an interesting game. And then Old Scotch, who have dropped 3 on the trot, they'll host Old Brighton in the grand final rematch at Camberwell. Could that be the spark that sort of kickstarts and ignites their season?
Could be. Yeah, it's going to be a huge game for both clubs. I can't wait for that Old Scotch, Old Brighton game. It's going to be an absolute beauty. And we've seen Old Scotch certainly in recent times have had the measure of the Tunners, who are dealing with a bit of that now, having lost to the Blacks, over the past few seasons. Old Scots beat the Tunners in the 2024 grand final. They led at quarter time in last year's decider, but a couple of injuries eventually told the tale for them. So
and they are missing some personnel at the moment, Scotch, too, it must be said.
Yeah,
they've got some big names out.
They are. No, that's fair to say as well. But they certainly showed that when they get things rolling, as they did in the first term last week, that they're still a very capable side, Old Scotch. So this is going to be a big game for all four of those teams, really, in those two matchups. Big 4 points on the line.
What did Matty say after this one?
So he said he started the game really well, played the game that they wanted to play, and the scoreboard reflected that 5-3 in the opening term. But the momentum shifted thereafter. Old Haileybury were able to control the ball better, particularly in the second half when the game was really up for grabs. They showed improvement in the system, but they need to work on the consistency across the four quarters. Paid note to Will Clark, who was sort of doing it all between forward and ruck. He had played well. And Harry Dixon was another one who's competing well at senior level, but is looking forward to the challenge of taking on the reigning premiers, the Tunners, this weekend.
Yeah, maybe that'll be the spark that ignites their season. From an Old Haileybury perspective, another great win for the Bloods. What did Guy Martin have to say?
Yeah, Guy was very happy to put consecutive weeks together. He said after their round one performance, they were really poor in the way they backed it up. So a big focus has been just that consistency, which is such a big theme for a young side. You just don't know what you're going to get. They're probably consistently inconsistent. And I think what I love here, he touched on the things that they worked on at training during the week, the things that the vision they showed, they went to work on it and then they executed it. That speaks a lot of volume about the maturity of this group. He spoke well of Seckle and Conway and said they justified their inclusions in the VAFA Big V squads that were named last week as well. So, yeah, he was just really happy with how they defended as well. And all signs are going well. I'm looking forward to watching the Bloods grow throughout the year.
Yeah, Bloods and Trinity, fascinating game this week.
That's
Two of the most exciting teams in the competition. When they both get the game on their terms, they play that slick, fast ball movement, and they can score quickly. So it's going to be a fantastic game. Really looking forward to that one. The final game of round 4 was a one-sided affair in the end. Old Zabs put Caulfield Grammarians to the sword at Toorak Park, but it was only late though. If you looked at the final score, it was a 99-point margin to Old Zabs, and you think, geez, they belted their brains in all afternoon, but it really wasn't the case. They kicked a couple of goals each early. Zabs flexed their muscle midway through the opening term. They kicked 4 in 9 minutes. They were 23 points up at quarter time. But the Fields, as they've done all year, were pretty gritty. They dug in for the fight in the second term, and it was only 33 points at half time. So they lessened the damage. Third term, more of the same. Zabs controlled the game, but weren't able to quite wriggle free and really put it on the scoreboard. It was only 3-1. It was out to 8 goals at the last change. But then they put the hammer down in the last quarter, as Zabs can do. They were so slick, they dominated, and this time they got return for effort on the scoreboard. They kicked 10-2 in the last term, a scintillating display. The margin got out beyond 100 points before Eddie Gibb kicked his third goal at the 31-minute mark, and in the end, as I mentioned, 99-point win. Zabs 22-17-149, their largest score since round 1 last year when they put D. Larcel to the sword in D. Lar's first game back up in Premier Men's. Their largest win since then. It was on the weekend, and a huge percentage bump, almost 33% they picked up over the weekend. So that's lifted them all the way up to second spot and closed the gap to the Tunners to just 9%. So a huge win, more than just 4 points really for Zabs. You look back at the end of the year, that's almost worth 2 games really. A win plus 33%. So they had winners all over the park. Campbell Lane had 43 touches. Sterling Phipps-Parsons had 35. 10 inside 50s, 9 clearances, and a beautiful goal. We'll have a look at it on socials. Weaves through a couple of opponents and kicks a lovely goal on the outside of his boot. And they just continue, Zabs, to keep building their squad with more and more ex-AFL talent in these situations. Ollie Seston, who's ex-Melbourne, best of field in his VAFA debut. He had 32 touches, 12 marks, 6 clearances, 5 inside 50s. He was the highest rated player in the ground. He's a good size, Brayden. He's extremely athletic. And then, he could be a real difference maker. And then so could Elwyn Davey, of course, a former AFL-listed player who's such a clever, smart, small forward. He kicked 4 from 14 disposals in his third VAFA appearance. They'll head to Melbourne Uni, Zabs, for a round 5 blockbuster against the Blues. This is going to be a fantastic game of football. And then the Fields have to regroup quickly. They've had a couple of thumping losses now. They go back to Glen Huntly Park, and they'll face St Kevin's in an important bounce-back game. So, impressive performance from Old Zabs. Dan Donati must be thrilled.
He was, and he said what you said, that it was a much tighter game for the first 3 quarters than what the scoreboard would suggest. He thought Caulfield pressure to move the ball really well for large portions of the game, but over the course of the ground, his Chargers just had a few more winners and ultimately they were able to pull away in the last quarter. He said it was a pretty even performance, not a perfect one, but they are improving their game with each week now, and he's looking forward to the challenge of Uni Blues next week. And to be honest, Brendan, that may well be the toughest game to pick. I mean, all of them are tough for me at the moment, the way things are going. But I think even from a general point of view, that could be the toughest one of the lot to pick from this weekend.
It might be one we have to come back with our tips on once we see the selected teams, because that could come down to it, who's available, what different VFL buys, what guys are coming back from injuries. But yeah, that's shaping up as an absolute must-watch.
What about Caulfield? That's two heavy back-to-back losses now, 80 points and 99 points. But as we said, it's the 99-point margin is a little deceptive. If you'd watched the game, it was actually closer than that for most of the day, even though Zabs were 8 goals up at three-quarter time. It was more about Caulfield not taking their chances as opposed to getting blown off the park, which they did in the last term, which was very un-Caulfield-like.
Yeah, but it's a bit of an issue, according to Sats, one of the great coaches. The last 2 weeks, they just haven't finished well. And so it's something that they need to address, because those sort of 8-goal blowouts in the last quarter, it can be the difference come the end of the season, whether you play finals, where you finish, just in percentage.
Whether you get relegated and whether you stay up. We've seen in the last few years, percentage has been everything.
Yeah, so he just said, we're going to go to work. Injuries haven't helped. Lochner, Ting, Moran, they're just a couple that they've lost in recent weeks, but there's been great opportunities as well. I touch on it when we get to the 19 segment, the fields have been without some, but it's good. Bit of short-term pain for long-term game for a club that has come up. They've come up from Prem B. They're competitive. So, again, once they get some games into these kids, who knows what the kids can do at a higher level as well. A lot of good footballers excel at a higher level.
Just got to hang in there, don't they, Caulfield, at the moment, and just keep on fighting and just keep in touch. That's the key at this time of the year. Don't let the chasing pack get too far ahead. They're back home this week. They'll face St Kevin's, and it's a really important bounce-back game for the Fields. That wraps up William Buck Premier Men's for round 4. After the break, we'll talk Premier B Men's with our so-called expert, Matthew Donald. That's next on For the Love of the Game. Keep up to date with everything that's happening around the VAFA by subscribing to our socials. We're on Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Has someone just taken a screamer or kicked goal of the year? Send us your best and we might share them around the league. Join in the fun with all the best pics, videos, stories and reels from around the competition. They're all on VAFA socials. Search VAFA and VAFA Women's on your favourite platforms. Welcome back to For the Love of the Game. Time to talk Premier B Men's, which is always a interesting competition. And sure enough, it's proving extremely difficult to tip. But the man who's been dominating... Actually, no. Instead, we haven't got the man who's been dominating the tipping. We've got Matty Donald, our expert instead, who's having a tough time of it. And rightly so. There's no harder competition in the entire VAFA to tip than Premier B Men's. Matty, where would you like to start this week with your round 4 report?
Yeah, Jason, I'm keeping that expert well hidden, because if you find out where he is, I'm out of a job here at the VAFA. We are going to start with Old Melburnians and Old Camberwell. This was a ripper game, and we talk about comebacks. Comebacks continue with Premier B, and there were a couple of beauties, and this was one of them. A goal in the dying seconds from Sam Laub, getting the job done here for Old Melburnians. They trailed by 16 points at the 15-minute mark of the final term, the OMs, but they kicked the last 3 goals of the game to win 9-8-62 to 8-10-58. Laub actually kicked not just the final goal in the match, he kicked the last 2 goals of the game to get the job done. Ned Nichols, 32 disposals and 14 intercepts for him. Liam Thomas was the best for the Wellers. He had 22 touches rather, and he kicked 3 goals. So there was some good winners right across the board. It was a hard-fought game of football, but nothing beats a match winner in the final seconds.
Yeah, Melburnians must be thrilled with that, and Old Camberwell, conversely, must be a bit gutted.
Yeah, no, James Byrne said he was really pleased with the fight that the team showed in the final term. He said the resilience in that last 5 minutes was really outstanding. The work rate was definitely there, but there's been a big focus on structures and systems, and very evident that they were adhered to late in the game. That's been a big focus for the OMs, trying to get the structures and the defensive systems in place. And it paid dividends at the weekend with an important win. Neil Connell said disappointed to fall at the very, very last hurdle. As I said, it was only a free kick in the last 30 seconds of the game that decided the match. But up until then, they'd played very well, and to lose the lead late was disappointing for them.
We spoke of comebacks before, Matty. The greatest comeback that didn't happen was De La Salle and Ajax. Can you just take us through what was a roller coaster game?
I can't. It's actually before I do that, I'll go back to 8 a.m. of the morning of the match a few hours. Nick Hyland, the coach of De La, calls up his brother Tom, who's the midfield coach, and says, "Tom, I'm crook. I'm no good. I'm too sick to coach this match. You're going to have to fill in for me. So Nick's brother Tom has actually stood up as acting coach. First time he's ever coached any team ever. So that may have unsettled D-La, you would have thought.
So he's normally D-La's midfield coach.
Yeah, normally D-La's midfield coach had to run the full ship this time around, but got the win, 10-14-94 to 11-9-75. Yeah, now Tom's got bragging rights at the family table, 100% success rate as coach. But that final score doesn't even begin to tell the tale.
So 14-10-94 to 11-9-75.
In time on the third term, D-La led by 53 points. It was looking like they were on course for a big, big win, and Tom was definitely going to replace Nick. But then it was an incredible comeback from the Jackers. They closed the gap to within 7 points in time on in the final term. They very, very nearly got there. But a couple of late goals to Luke Healy and Pat Russell late in the game sealed it. And it leaves both teams with a 2-2 record after the opening month. Healy himself finished with 4 goals, 1 from 11 marks. Kane Nissenbaum for the Jackers outstanding, 29 disposals and 12 clearances. But it's an extraordinary game. And I think as far as comebacks go, this one would have absolutely taken the cake if the Jackers managed to get up, 53 points down, getting to within 7. Phenomenal effort.
Yeah, incredible. We've been waiting to see Old Ivanhoe's season kick into gear. Did it finally happen on the weekend? They played a screamer of a game. 31-goal shootout, 16-13-109 to defeat Old Kerry 15-10-100 by 9 points at Charlesworth Park.
Yeah, no, this was a great win for Old Ivanhoe. Proper shootout, which we love a good old shootout in the VAFA. And I tell you what, 9-point margin was looking bigger than that at one point. The lead in the last term got down to as much as 37 points.
So another game where
it
was comeback weekend, round 4.
Very nearly happened. The Panthers kicked the last 4 goals of the game to make it interesting, but they just left themselves with a bit too much to do. And that's how Giles sort of saw it in the end. Coming back from 37 points in the last term, very unlikely to win a game in that situation, as good as the comeback was. For Old Ivanhoe, Xavier Nash was pleased with the way that his players have performed, not just at the weekend, but across the whole. It's been a difficult start to the season for the Hoers, and he said that he was pleased that they were able to respond so well. The simple message for the Hoers players has just been getting back to playing to their strengths and playing for each other, and that he's been really proud of the journey so far.
Yeah, they're a side, I think, that if they get rolling, they're going to take some beating. As we've touched on, they've been missing some key players, but a side that I think we're really enjoying talking about every week is Willie C. Wise. They're absolutely on fire. 2 late goals to win the game against Beaumaris. What can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there have been any comebacks that have taken place over the course of this weekend, but there was one here. C-Wise winning 12-10-82 to 11-9-75, a 7-point win. They trailed by as much as 14 points early in the final term as well. They kicked the last 4 goals of the game to get it done, the C-Wise in the end. Aidan McCarroll kicked 4 goals.
What a player he is.
He was terrific. And Will Smythe and Harry Miller each kicked 3. So there were a number of goal kickers going around for the C-Wise. Max Holt for the Sharks, he kicked 3 goals. Zach Hawkins, 31 disposals and 12 marks. So there were some good performers again across the board. Contasoglu, the C-Wise coach, he was just relieved to come away with the win at the end of it all. We made mention of this last week. Their record in games decided by 12 points or less, they went 1-4 last year, the C-Wise, which cost them finals. They're now 2-0 this time around so far. So they've made a very good start to the season in terms of winning the close ones. He said that they knew they required around 4 or 5 goals in the last quarter to be able to get the job done. So they tried to open the game up a bit. It was very stoppage centric in the first 3 quarters, and they were able to open up the game and get the goals they needed. Josh Burke, the Sharks coach, happy with the way the team played, but lamented the missed opportunities in the second half. He said they were pleased with the performance, but they still want to be better. They understand that Williamstown are a very strong side, but they had enough of the ball to be able to make the most of their opportunities and kick enough goals to get it done. It's a great lesson that if you don't take those chances, it can come back to bite you.
The big win of the weekend was Collegians, 18-15-123. Old Geelong, 4-5-29. 94-point win at Como Park. That is a huge win for Collegians.
Yep, they maintain their unbeaten start to the season, 4-0, and a big gap, not just in terms of the game clear, but in terms of percentage as well, up to 185% for them now. Alex Lukic, he had a big day, but this could have been an enormous day.
This could have been an all-timer.
Absolutely could have been. And we talk about Tunwatch. He could be putting himself right into the frame. Mitch Brown, you could well have company. He kicked 6 goals, 8.
Wow.
6 goals, 8 he kicked. It was a phenomenal performance.
Oh, he's such a difficult player to match up on at that size. I think he's about 194, but he moves like a small. Like, he's just such a tough matchup. He's powerful, he can mark, but he can also win it on the deck, turn around and kick snap goals. He's a really difficult matchup, even at VFL level.
he's really exciting. And being Mother's Day, I reckon his mum might have been glad she's maybe not paying him $5 a goal. It could have been a very expensive outing for mum.
6-8 for the day.
Yeah.
That's a final score for some teams. Well, he beat Geelong by 15 points.
Did outscore Geelong, and Jordy McKenzie's got his work cut out for him to try and keep him away from the VFL selectors over the coming weeks.
Listed with
14
Box Hill,
goals
yep.
in the last 2 games for Lukic.
So how did they do it, Collegians? Obviously, Lukic was there to finish it off, but gee, that's a massive win, 18 goals to 4.
Yeah, well, Jordy McKenzie said that it was the consistency across the whole board that the team showed. He said it was definitely their best 4-quarter effort for the year. Most games that they've played so far this season, the game's been on the line at some point going into halftime or even 3-quarter time. The 4 points have still been up for grabs. So just really happy with the way that all 3 lines were able to dominate right throughout the course of the afternoon. For Nick Dixon, he just conceded that they were just beaten by a very good side. And Collegians, I think, have established themselves as the early flag favourites in Premier B. Their ability to spread the ground and outnumber the OGs at every contest was what stood out most for Nick Dixon. They're a long way off the standard required, but there's no substitute for hard work, and that's what they're going to go back to, and they'll look to improve from there.
And Dan Orgel had a big day. The Footscray VFL captain. The Footscray were on the bye, of course, so he had a chance to go back and play at Collegians, and he certainly made it count.
Yeah, no, he did definitely, and this it may not get too many opportunities. It just worked out quite nicely with Footscray having their bye in the VFL, and Dan consequently being available for Collegians. So may not be too many more opportunities we get to see him line up for the Lions in 2026, but was very impressive. Geordie was thrilled to have him for the 4 quarters that he did. Got a couple of goals as well, so it was a very useful inclusion.
So Collegians sit top of the table. They are 4-0 with a percentage of 185.7. They're a game clear of Williamstown, who sit outright second at 3-1 on 12 points, and then go back a game to 2-2. There's 5 teams at 2-2. De La Salle, Beaumaris, Old Carey, Ajax, and Old Melburnians, who are currently 7th. 2 teams on 1 win, 1 and 3. Old Camberwell and Old Ivanhoe. And Geelong, 3 teams, Old Geelong also on 1 win. So Collegians, Williamstown, D-La and Bowie are the top 4. Then Old Carey, Ajax, Old Melburnians, Old Camberwell, Old Ivanhoe and Old Geelong. That wraps up Premier B Men's for round 4. After the break, we'll talk Prem C Men's on For the Love of the Game.
The VAFA Big V Luncheon returns in 2026 on June 5 at the RACV City Club, a celebration of community, tradition and the very best of Big V representative football. Join the 2026 squads, past greats and supporters as we honour the game, including the induction of 3 Big V champions, recognised for their outstanding contribution to the mighty Big V. And don't miss the proud moment for the future as the 2026 Senior Big V men's and women's teams are officially presented with their Guernseys. It's history, pride and passion all in one room. Tickets available now at vafa.com.au.
Welcome back to For the Love of the Game. It's time to talk Prem C Men's. We're going to start at Boss James Reserve, where Hampton Rovers had another big win, 18-13, 121. Defeated Pegs 8-12-60 by 61 points. Great win for Mazenod, 28-point win over Glenira Old McKinnon, 15-10, 100 to Glenira Old McKinnon, 10-12, 72. Good road win there for the Nodders. Tight game at Mentone Reserve. We were looking forward to this one, and it didn't disappoint. Fitzroy in the end, getting home 13-15, 93. Defeating St Bede's Mentone Tigers 13-7-85. The Roys by 8 points. Parkdale by 17 points over Marcelin, 12-15-87, defeating Marcelin 10-10-70 at the College. And then the big result of the weekend, it was the rematch of last year's Division 1 Grand Final between Ormond and Old Peninsula. And Ormond extracted some sort of measure of revenge, if that's at all possible, which it really isn't. There's no revenge for losing a grand final, but 23-14, 152 Ormond. Old Peninsula 7-14-56, a 96-point win for the Monders.
Yeah, massive result. Percentage in that relegation battle is going to be huge. I think those 2 teams we expect to probably stay down there towards the end of the season. There is a bit of a gap between the top 5 and the bottom 5 at the moment, but Monders coach Kyle Pinto is just super proud of this group. All he's spoken about is if we bring pressure, we're going to be in most ball games, and they were. And again, even he said there was no revenge. We can't take back what happened last year. Both sides got promoted, and we're in a new division. So he noted that the Pirates have been smashed by injuries, missing a lot of guys, some older bodies, some young guys. He said they've got some great young talents themselves that he enjoyed watching, but a couple of kids that he touched on, Harrison Ross. He played a defender last year for the Monders. gone forward, kicked 5 on the weekend. Mason Thatcher, he's hard running up and down the wings, fantastic. And what I love, they're using their junior system. So there's 2 kids on Play HQ listed under a season permit by Sam Howley and Harry Robertson. They're only under 17 still. They both played on the weekend. Robinson actually plays in the ruck as a backup ruckman at 6'3", which is just absolutely huge. It's really exciting to see. But yeah, it's the one I'm looking forward to watching the development. And it's worth noting, if you like young players that onto big things, Josh Bridges, he's been thrown in the deep end at centre half back, and they weren't sure what they were going to get, but this kid's just accepted the challenge and flies at everything. And if he gets a few kicked on him, he doesn't get down on himself.
They've got a proud history, the Monders, of bringing through young talent. I actually bumped into Luke Kennedy last night at a function. Luke Kennedy, of course, who's now on the Bulldogs list, won their senior best and fairest at the age of 16 a few years back. So the Monders have got a proud record of bringing through some young kids and giving them opportunities at an early age.
No, it's fantastic. Like Kyle said to me, he's not scared to get younger. Like, you look at their side, there is a lot of youth in there. And to bring in 2 17-year-olds, he'll manage them through. He's not going to rob the under-17s to go play with their mates and things like that. But they're getting experience at such a good level of footy. Like, people might say, Prem say it's the 3rd tier of VAFA footy. This standard is as good as you'll see. The ball, it moves around so well, and the kids get to show off their skills as well. So, yeah, they've got a great, and it's just about balancing who plays when, throwing them around as well. I love these throwing the magnets around and helping them understand different roles, because that's how you're going to play high-level footy.
And as we take a look at the ladder, there is a clear top 4 at the moment who have kicked a game clear of the field.
Yeah, it's a bit of a pack now. It's starting to split apart over the opening month. We've got Fitzroy and Mazenod, who are still the 2 unbeaten sides, separate only by percentage in 1st and 2nd, respectively. Parkdale Vultures sitting behind them in 3rd, a 3-1 record alongside Hampton Rovers. The percentage chasm here is a big one, though. Parkdale, 243% still. Hampton Rovers, 126. Then we go back. St Bede's Mentone, the only side with a 2-2 record. They're in 5th. And then there are 4 teams with 1 win. Pegs, Ormond, Glenara, Old McKinnon, and then Marcelin. Again, percentage separating them. Old Peninsula still looking for their first win in 2026.
Mazenod taking on Hampton Rovers in this coming week in round 5, so that'll be a big top 4 clash there. Mazenod sitting 2nd, undefeated. Hampton Rovers 3-1. So that does give the opportunity for a team like potentially St Bede's Mentone Tigers to try and make up a little bit of ground. Once the top 4 teams start playing against each other, one's generally going to win and one's generally going to lose. That's Premier C men's. Let's talk Division 1. Let's roll straight on over into the Division 1 football for 2026 and our round 4 results. Preston Bull Ants, 44-point winners over Parkside, 11-16-82, defeated Parkside 5-8-38. Q, 18-point winners over St Mary's Salesian, 14-17-101, defeated the Saints 12-11-83. Brunswick, big win over Old Yarra Cobras, 73 points, 15-19-109, defeated Old Yarra 5-6-36. Oakley, big winners as well over Monash, 14-18-102, defeated the Monash Blues 7-8-50 by 52 points. And then the really big win of the weekend, Paran, 18-16-124, defeated UHSVU 2-4-16 by 104 points. That's a big win. And in this Division 1 men's at the moment, we've got 1 undefeated team, Preston Bull Ants. They sit at 4-0.
Yeah, on top of the ladder, still unbeaten. And then there's a big logjam of teams that are on 3 wins after that. The 2 Blue Lions, Paran, Oakley Parkside, St Mary's Salesian making up the top 5, all on 3 wins and 1 defeat to this point. Then there's a bit of a gap. Brunswick in 6th spot, along with Q and UHSVU, who are all got 1 win. Monash Blues and Old Yarra round out the top 10, each looking for their first win of 2026 still.
Division 2 men's. Let's take a look at the results from round 4 action, and we'll kick off with a close one, Matty, at John Pascoe Faulkner Reserve between Therry Penola and MHSOB. Yeah,
Therry Penola getting the job done. Accurate kicking, proving to be the kicker here in the end. 13-5-83 to 10-12-72. So a critical win there for Therry Penola. Looking across the rest of the results, Elstonwick getting a win over Aquinas, 14-19, 103 to 11-9-75. Canterbury over South Melbourne, 18-12, 120 to 13-8-86. A 34-point win there for Canterbury. Whitefriars against North Brunswick, 12-16-88 to 8-6-54. And then Powerhouse were too good for West Brunswick, winning 12-11-83 to 7-11-53. An even 5-goal win there for Powerhouse.
So 3 teams still undefeated in Division 2 men's. Powerhouse, Canterbury and Whitefriars all sit at 4-0. 1 game further back to Elstonwick sitting in 4th spot. They're 3-1. South Melbourne are 2-2. MHSOB, one of 3 teams on 1 win and 3 losses. MHSOB, West Brunswick and Therry Penola. And then 2 teams yet to register a win in Division 2 so far this season. It's Aquinas and North Brunswick. As we take a look at Division 3, Brayden?
Yeah, obviously just the 2 games in Division 3. Wattle Park, who are the clear premiership favourites at the moment. Another big win, 25-16, 166. Got the better of Latrobe, 128. And in the weekend's other game, Hawthorn also brought their kicking boots with a good, solid 22-15, 147 to 13-10, 88 win over Albert Park. So a bit of a shootout there at the Hawks Nest.
Yeah, Wattle Park and Hawthorn, the 2 standouts at the moment in Division 3 footy. That wraps up the men's competition for round 4. After the break, we'll talk VAFA women's footy when For the Love of the Game continues.
VAFA Media has risen to another level in 2026 with more live stream and radio coverage coming your way every Saturday. Enjoy our award-winning VAFA SEN Match of the Day radio call on vafa.com.au and the SEN app from 1:45. Plus a host of Premier Men's matches and our Under-19 Premier Match of the Round streaming every week on Community TV, along with more live and free matches from Premier Men's and Premier Women streaming on vafa.com.au than ever before. And don't forget that every game from Premier Men's, Premier B, Premier C and Premier Women's can be enjoyed on demand in full every week at vafa.com.au. Saturdays are for the VAFA. Catch the action live on the VAFA website, Community TV and the SEN app.
Welcome back to For the Love of the Game. It is time to talk William Buck Premier Women's. Our results from round 4. Old Brighton continue their winning ways. 7-8-50 defeated Westbourne Grammar 3-1-19 down at Brighton Beach by 31 points. Caulfield Grammarians 6-5-41 over Kew 1-7-13, 28-point win to Caulfield at Glen Huntly Park. Big win for St Kevin's 10-9-69 over Williamstown CYMS 2-5-17, 52-point victory there for the Scob. West Brunswick 6-1-37 defeating Fitzroy 4-3-27. West Brunswick by 10 points. And Old Scotch 12-6-78 defeating Old Geelong 4-4-28 by 50 points down at Camberwell. News in regrading, and we'll run through all of these through our women's competition. Regrading happening this week. The news that impacts Premier Women's is it's going from being a top 10 team competition to a 9-team competition because Willie CYMS are going to drop down to Premier B. So they'll be in Premier B from round 5 onwards. No one coming up from Premier B. That'll just go from being 10 teams to 9 teams. So that is Premier Women's. Let's talk Premier B. And the story of Premier B women so far in 2026 has been Beaumaris, who have started 4-0. Joining us is their coach, DAMIAN FARROW. DAMIAN, thanks for your time.
Good to see you, Jace.
Mate, it's been an amazing 18 months, I guess, for the Beaumaris women's program. There's obviously been tragedy with Bianca and Holly losing their lives late in 2024 and the impact that had on the team last year. Played some great footy, got elevated to Premier Women's. And then, obviously found that standard pretty difficult. This year, you're back in Premier B Women's. You've taken over as coach and you've started 4-0. So it's been a tumultuous kind of 18 months, both on and off the field. How are you feeling about where everything sits right now?
Yeah, look, it's when you summarise it down in the way you just did, it sounds very tumultuous. But I suppose I keep coming back to one of our team values is community, and I think that's been probably the strongest feature of everything that's happened over the last little while, is that we're just so connected as a community, all the players and coaching staff and broader football community. That's the men's program, the parents, everyone. We're just really tightly connected, and I think that's just made it a really enjoyable 18 months in that respect, in that adversity, creates opportunity for other things to emerge. And that's probably been the nice thing about all the difficulties that we've experienced.
Yeah, it's a wonderful way of putting it. We talk about this a bit, Damien, when clubs are going through elevation and relegation, and we're having a bit of that this week with regrading happening. You guys had that experience last year of dominating early, then went up a division and struggled a bit, and now you're back into Prem B. How do you deal as a coach with changing expectations amongst the players more so? I mean, you've been around footy forever, so you understand how this all works. But from a playing perspective, you go from being dominant to struggling to potentially dominant again. How do you try and keep your players on an even keel?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question, I think, for all of us. But certainly we rarely, if ever, talk about on game day or even through the season. We don't talk about winning and losing. We just talk about, and it's a boring thing, but everyone talks about the process. So we try and celebrate a lot around the process of being, just like I talked about, being connected as a community, being, forging stronger relationships, learning. Footy gives you lots of lessons, and so we talk a lot about that. Anything that's happens is just a learning opportunity, and so that's probably how we try and focus on it. Now, when you lose repeatedly each week, as we were experiencing last year, well, that really tests that, and certainly the players they want to win. We all want to win games. That's why we play as well. So it's just trying to create small wins that you can build on. And I suppose that's what we've tried to do. Is there was things that we did last year that have stood us in good stead for what we're building on this year. And now there's certainly in the first 4 weeks they've had some results go their way, which probably reinforces that they've learned some lessons from being in the stiffer competition of Prem A last season.
Damien, congratulations on the start to the season. You just touched on some things that the team did last year that have sort of set themselves up for a strong start this season. Can you elaborate on what some of those things are that the girls picked up from last year that they've been able to carry into 2026?
Yeah, I think there's two really obvious things, and I think it happens at whatever level you're at. When you go to the next level, it becomes apparent. The speed or intensity of the game is really noticeable. So we really try and train at speed and intensity. So we've tried to do that and simulate that as often as possible. And then I think the other thing is that teams, the higher you go, the more well organised and well structured they are. And our players constantly used to talk about opposition midfields, and they thought they were there and they thought they had them defended, and then the ball is chained out of a contest and it's down the other end before they knew what had hit them. So that just structure and shape around contest, which we all talk about as coaches, they're really obvious things that change when you go through the levels. So we've put a fair bit of time into trying to recreate that and have a system or a process that will hopefully keep adapting as we get more challenged.
Speaking of your system, you're only averaging 23 points against the game. You must be immensely proud of how well you are defending the ground at the moment.
Yeah, we practice it, so we're getting reward for the amount of effort they put in. I suppose we're lucky. We've got a young list, so we've got a lot of players that like to run and are fit and strong, and so repeat effort defending is something that they're excellent at. And then we've spent quite a bit of time on tackle technique this season, and that's something that we probably needed to do more of. And every week we're doing more and more tackle work, and that's helping when we need to cover defend.
Damien, some breaking news. We've got regrading happening this week. So you've got a new challenger in Premier B. I can tell you that Willie CYMS are coming down from Premier Women's to Premier B. So Willie CYMS now on your horizon. Latrobe dropping down to Division 1. So one of the quirks, I guess, of playing in a competition like the VAFA, sort of 4 or 5 weeks in, the landscape changes slightly. You've just got to be adaptable, don't you?
You do, and knowing we had a great run with Willie last year, and being another community club, that'll be a great challenge, and we'll look forward to that when we get across the bridge. So that'll be fun.
From a playing personnel perspective this year, have you got many new faces to last year? Or have you pretty much retained the core of what you've got and you've just sort of built around that?
Yeah, we certainly have retained the core, which is really nice. As you know, there's a lot of learning from that group. We're really proud of our pathway from our junior club. So the under 18 girls that have top age that have then progressed up, we've got a number of them who have come straight into the senior side and others in the reserves. So that's what we're really trying to cultivate. We're a pretty big, well, I think we're an extremely big junior club,
huge.
and so it makes sense that we really want to encourage that retention and pathway. So again, that's a real focus for the Bowie Footy Club in general, is the pathway. We're not an old school program as such, so we sort of have to draw on, Beaumaris Secondary College and some of the private schools in the area where the juniors have played their footy. And so we do have a number of girls that have come from that program up into the senior program this year, which just keeps refreshing it. And like we see in, VFLW, AFLW, the younger talent is unbelievable in their skills because they've played footy from a younger age, and it's exciting to watch.
Damien, thanks so much for your time, mate. Congratulations on your start to the season. 4-0 is a wonderful start, and best of luck for the road ahead.
Thanks, Jace. Good to chat.
Great story, Beaumaris, Damien Farrrow and the team doing a wonderful job. Elsewhere in Premier B Women's, let's run through the results.
Yeah, so the other results to take place: Port Melbourne Chargers over Old Yarra Cobras, 5-5-35 to 1-5-11 there for Port Melbourne. Old Melburnians, a hard-fought win over Old Zaverians. You don't see this too often, kicking fewer goals and managing to still win the game. 1-7-13 Old Melburnians, Old Zaverians, 2 straight 12. So every point really does count in the VAFA. Parkside with a big win over Latrobe, 8-7-55 to 3 behinds was the other result to take place across round 4 in Premier B.
And Beaumaris 5-12-42, as we mentioned, over Glenora, Old McKinnon 2-1-13. Bowie travelling beautifully. They sit atop the ladder after 4 rounds. They are 4-0. So we mentioned Willie CYMS in the regrading is dropping down into Premier B. It will still remain the same number of teams. It'll be an 8-team competition because Latrobe University will actually drop down to Division 1. So they made a jump of a couple of spots over the summer. So they're being regraded from Premier B Women's down to Div 1 Latrobe. Speaking of Div 1, Brayden, let's run through the Div 1 Women's results for round 4.
Yeah, it was a great weekend for the Powerhouse Women's, following on from their men's success. They came away with a 2-13-25 to 2 straight kick win.
Every point does count. All 13 of them. They both kicked 2 goals each, and they won by 13 points.
A literal 13-point win.
Yeah.
I guess the positives you could take away that you create so many opportunities. In some other results, Marcelin came away with a 4-2-26 to 3-3-21 win over Whitefriars. Ormond, big winners, 9-6-60 over Old Kerry, 2-5-17. And to round out the results, it was Oakley, 7-8-50 to 3-3-21 against St Mary's Salesian.
Speaking of St Mary's Salesian, they're another team that will be regraded. They're going to go from D1 down to D2 as of this weekend for the Saints. Speaking of Div 2 results, Matty?
MCCFC with a good win over UHSVU, 4-2-26 to 4 behinds. Beaumaris with a 6-point win over Richmond Central, 3-3-21 to 2-3-15. Caulfield Grammarians with a big win over the Old Yarra Cobras, 4-10-34 to 1-2-8. And a hard-fought 3-point win for Old Camberwell against Hampton Rovers. Low-scoring affair at Castlefield Reserve. Old Camberwell 1-3-9, Hampton Rovers 6 behinds in the end, the final score in that match.
A couple of regradings from Division 2 down to Division 3 Women's. Old Yarra, Cobras and Caulfield are dropping down from D2 to D3. Speaking of D3, Brayden, results from the weekend.
And speaking of every point matters, De La Salle 1-8 came out on top against Brunswick, 1-1-7. So every point literally mattered in that game as well. Unfortunately, Port Melbourne Chargers, second side, they forfeited, allowing Masnod to get the 4 points there. In the third game of the weekend, the Albert Park Falcons, 6-9-45, came away with a 2-3-15 win against Fitzroy's third side. Obviously, Fitzroy up in the Premier Women's. And in the final game of the weekend, a game that we'd been looking forward to, Old Haileybury, 5-13-43, got the better of Hawthorn, 0-5-5.
So a lot of these teams, new teams and their second teams and third teams, etc. So there is always going to be a bit of a discrepancy in the early rounds. So the footy department here at the VAFA go through all the results over the first 4 weeks and make some changes. And we tend to be quite a lot towards the bottom end of women's divisional footy because we have got that uncertainty around all these new teams coming in. So Division 3 Women's, some significant changes. I mentioned Caulfield and Old Yarra coming down to Division 3 Women's. Parkdale Vultures and Paran Collegians, the 2 Blue Lions, they're jumping up 2 divisions. They're coming from Division 5 to Division 3 because they have both started the season in incredible fashion. Parkdale Vultures and Paran have both, Paran Collegians, both been undefeated. They've got percentages of 3,750 and 2,550 respectively. So they're jumping up 2 divisions from Division 5 to Division 3. So Division 3 Women's now looks like Caulfield Grammarians, Old Yarra Cobras, Hawthorn, Old Haileybury, Parkdale Vultures and Paran Collegians and Port Melbourne Chargers as well. I think they might be involved as well. So that's Division 3. Let's talk Division 4 results from the weekend.
Let's do that. Odds of average were the big winners with a 26-point win over Ormond, 5-8, 38 to 2 straight 12. A couple of really close games to make out round 4 here. MUWFC 5-7, 37 over Aquinas, 4-10, 34. So a 3-point win there in the end. And the North Brunswick with a 4-point win over Canterbury, 6-3, 39, place 5-5, 35. The other match which didn't take place between Wattle Park and Glen Ira, Old McKinnon. Glen Ira, Old McKinnon unfortunately had to forfeit, so Wattle Park taking the victory there.
So that's Division 4. So now we've got 4 teams that have come from Division 3 down to Division 4. This is all very confusing. You can see it all written out for you to explain on the VAFA website. But Brunswick, Albert Park, Mazenod and Fitzroy's third team are going to come from Division 3 down to Division 4. So Division 4 will now look like Wattle Park, Old Zavs, the Muggers, Aquinas, North Brunswick, Canterbury, Brunswick, Albert Park, Mazenod and Fitzroy. That'll be a 10-team Division 4 competition. Let's talk Division 5, Brayden.
Yeah, and one of those teams we touched on, Parkdale Vultures, they've gone up with a bang. A 19-16, 130 to scoreless win over De La Salle Women's 2. The following game, Preston Bullants 8-6-54 got the better of West Brunswick 139. That's the Magpies' third side. The Two Blues Lions, as Matty always tells us, the best name in the VAFA and maybe even football, with a 7-16, 58 to nothing win over Monash Blues. St Kevin's third side, a 7-6, 48 to one straight behind win against South Melbourne Districts. And in the final game of the weekend, Alston Wick 6-5, 41 got the better of Parkside 2, 5-1, 31.
So Division 5, we mentioned Parkdale Vultures and Paran Collegians jumping up out of Division 5. They'll jump up to Division 3. 2 teams coming back into Division 5. Glen Ira, Old McKinnon's second team and Ormond's second team. So that too will remain a 10-team competition, Division 5 women's. So we've got the Griffins, we've got the Monders, we've got St Kevin's third team, Preston Bullants, Parkside seconds, West Brunswick's thirds, Monash Blues seconds, South Melbourne, Elstonwick and De La Salle seconds in the Division 5 competition. That wraps up VAFA Women's for round 4. As I mentioned, if you want more information on all the regrading, go to the VAFA website. It will all be there. After the break, we will talk Holmesglen Under 19 Premier with LACHIE MOIR. That's next on For the Love of the Game.
Looking for VAFA updates on the go? Download the brand new VAFA app today. Get live scores, fixtures, ladders, and all the latest VAFA news right at your fingertips. Whether you're a player, supporter, or just love local footy, the VAFA app keeps you in the game. Search VAFA in your app store and download it now.
Welcome back to For the Love of the Game. Time to talk Holmesglen Under 19 Premier, and it is tight at the top. 4 teams level on 3 and 1. Old Brighton, St Beans, Mentone Tigers, De La Salle and Old Zavs. And then another couple of teams on 8 wins, a couple on 8 points rather, a couple on 6, one on 4, and Old Scotch yet to have a win. So it is a tight competition, a really good quality competition as we spoke of last week. Very difficult to tip. But a man who is all over it for us is our VAFA media reporter, LACHIE MOIR. LACHIE, thanks for your time.
No worries, boys. Good to be back. You're right. It is very tight at the top. Yeah, it'd be very hard to tip, as you said. So hopefully I can improve. It seems like I come on here every week and say that. But yeah, when there's 4 teams all tied for first, surely some people out there can have some sympathy for me.
Well, look, the upside is you've always got Matty Donald here bringing up the rear. So
you're not the only one.
You're going great. This week you and Sechi had 3 tips apiece. So you've at least stabilised the situation. Where would you like to start?
Yeah, I'd like to start with St Kevin's. Yeah, I was impressed with them. St Kevin's beat Parkdale 113 to 42. Dominant win in the performance of the round for me. They really controlled every phase of the game. Their backline was resistant, their midfield was good, and their forwards, they were unselfish, dishing off certain goals. And yeah, they were just really impressive there at home. Speaking to Paul Greenham, he said it was one of the most complete games of footy he'd seen throughout the year. So it's good to see them execute all facets of the game. And unfortunately for Parkdale, although they had some moments after half time, they just couldn't really get on the scoreboard. And when you can't take your chances against a team like St Kevin's, it's going to be a long day. So really, really good performance from St Kevin's, and good to see them really sort of stamp their authority.
Then Lockie turned to Brighton Beach Oval. Old Brighton, they maintain their spot on top of the table. It's a very tight wrestle at the top, but they're standing above the pack at the moment, and they got a big win over Beaumaris at the weekend.
Yeah, another really good complete 4-quarter performance. Trav O'Donoghue, the head coach, said it was his side's best 4-quarter performance of the season. Their defensive structure really set the tone, only conceding 18 points. And Brighton's pressure and their discipline and their ability to sort of create those repeat turnovers was second to none. They were amazing in that aspect of the game. But yeah, just an important percentage boosting win for them. They sit top of the table now. And it looks like they're really starting to build some momentum. Beaumaris not disgraced. I just think they came up against a very complete and a very good side who are hard to beat away from home.
Lockie, moving on. Toorak Park under lights, the twilight game. Old Zavs were too good for a Caulfield grammarian side that are arguably missing a few, with a few kids actually in the senior side at the moment, but good results for Zavs.
Yeah, you are right. They are missing a few Caulfield, which obviously would have hurt them here. But look, it was a very tight contest. I thought they played well, Caulfield.
It was a fantastic game. This was our KTV game. Lockie, early on, it was a shootout. It was great to watch.
It was great to watch. I just think Xavier probably edged it in that midfield. Their midfield dominance really hurt them, and their ball movement and their ability to sort of get the ball uncontested and get them on the outside was just, I think, too good for Caulfield in the end, and probably hurt them, obviously, with their players out. But they really capitalised going forward as well. Caulfield were good inside 50, I thought, as well, but they just struggled to move the ball. And another good win from Old Zabs. And they're starting to emerge themselves as a genuine contender. And I think Matt Hanley's got them playing some good footy. So, yeah, watch out for them going forward.
And so accurate. 16-9, 105 to 11-5, 71. It was an outstanding display of goal kicking from both sides. No one could miss over under the scoreboard in the right forward pocket up against the boundary line. They just kept slotting them from both teams. It was a wonderful performance. Now, St Bede's and De La Salle, that was the closest game of the weekend. Just 16 points in it in the end at Mentone Reserve. St Bede's Mentone Tigers 10-10-70 defeated De La Salle 8-6-54.
Yeah, the pressure in this game was very good. They were both very good around the contest, and it was a very tight game. There wasn't much in it for majority of this match, and I thought St Bede's, their defence across all the ground and their ability to pressure, run down, tackle, all that sort of stuff was great. De La Salle showed some great resilience and they were playing some good footy, but probably just ran out of legs late. But look, positive signs for both of these teams. Speaking to Andy Otten, the coach of De La Salle, conditions weren't ideal, and it sort of forced the teams to abandon that skill game that they pride themselves on and make it a physical contest. And I think in the end, St Bede's just relished that a little bit more and run away 16-point winners. But don't write off De La Salle. They'll be back.
And just rounding things off, Lockie, at University Oval, we talked about Old Scotch. They're still looking for their first win of the season. They gave themselves a really good chance against University Blues, but the Blues just outlasted them that final term.
Yeah, 100%. Old Scotch led by 14 at half time, and you were sort of thinking at that point they may have turned a corner, but unfortunately the second half let them down. And it's good to see Uni Blues get on the win board, especially after some very close losses to kick off the season. But I think the defensive adjustments they made at that halftime break really, tested Scotch, and they couldn't be as efficient going forward. And shout out Ruckman Xavier Blood. He played 100% game time, so that is a fair effort from him. And obviously unavailable is the theme of this round, with Scotch having some key players out. But yeah, I don't know where to now for Scotch. Obviously haven't registered a win this year, need to improve, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks they can get on the winners board, because if you drop too many games early on in the season, it'll be hard to sort of get back up come finals time. So hopefully they'll be all good going forward.
Xavier Blood. That's a quintessential VAFA name, but he surely should be playing either for Zabs or Old Haileybury.
I was going to say, that's a bit odd. You've got an Old Scotch player called Xavier Blood.
He's got all the bases covered.
Pick a lane.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, let's look ahead to round 5, Lockie, and your tips. Kicks off with Old Scotch taking on Caulfield, 9:20 at Camberwell.
Yeah, I'm going to be taking Caulfield here. Just can't trust Old Scotch, unfortunately, at the moment. So I think Caulfield can bounce back. Obviously, they were good against Xavier. It was tight, as you said, a bit of a shootout there. So I'll be taking Caulfield.
Uni Blues versus St Bede's Mentone Tigers, 9:20 at Melbourne Uni.
Yeah, Uni Blues were good, but I think St Bede's in this one away from home can get it done. Obviously, that impressive win against De La Salle can really build some momentum going forward, and I think they'll win.
Parkdale versus Old Brighton, 9:20 at Jerry Green.
Yeah, tough one, this one. Parkdale obviously coming off a big loss, I think may hurt them. So I'll side with Old Brighton. I think they're starting to get up and about, and they'll be humming along nicely.
Our KTV game coming to you live on Community TV, live and exclusive. De La Salle taking on Beaumaris, 11:40, Waverley Oval.
Yeah, look, Beaumaris, another team that only registered 18 points last week, albeit against a very good side. De La Salle, I think last week's game is a bit of a forgive, so I'm happy to take De La Salle in this one.
And the final game of round 5, St Kevin's taking on Old Zabs, 2 p.m. at TH King.
Yeah, a bit of a local rivalry, this one. Really looking forward to this game. Both teams are playing very good football. I'll take St Kevin's. I think they're just starting to really put the score on, and they'll be hard to stop. I think, especially away from home for Xavier. So yeah, I'll take Skevs.
Lockie, thanks for your time as always, mate. We'll talk to you next week on For the Love of the Game.
No worries, gents. Thanks for having me.
The VAFA Rising Star Award recognises the competition's most talented young players. Each week, the VAFA Rising Star Committee receives nominations for one male and one female player aged 20 years or under who played no more than 7 senior games before this season. Our overall season winners will be declared the VAFA Rising Stars for 2026. So if your club has a young gun making their mark, nominate them now at media@vafa.com.au. Welcome back to For the Love of the Game. Let's talk goals. Thanks to Sharon. We'll start with big bags from round 4. The bags weren't quite as big in round 4 as they were in round 3. The most goals anyone kicked across the VAFA across the weekend. 4 players kicked 7 goals. Max Noble from Old Carey under-19s. Griff Adams from Old Brighton's thirds. Isabella Geetzman from Ormond Senior Women's booted 7. Fantastic result there. And Connor Spears from Zab's thirds also kicked 7 goals. 12 players kicked 6 across the weekend. We did talk about the conditions a couple of times. A little bit sticky, a little bit slippery, not quite as conducive to big bags.
Yeah, it's disappointing. Come on, Melbourne's weather.
Lift.
More lift. Give us more like days like today. It's a beautiful week, actually. The whole week's looking like that. So, yeah, we're getting into that time of year. Grounds are getting a bit softer. The tracks are... The ball movement's probably not as pretty at the moment, but again, we're going to back the fours to make the shows. Defenders, it's not about you.
We're still on track for Ton Watch. Joey Pignataro will be out there somewhere saying, "See, I told you no one can ever kick 100." Well, Jake Dillon did last year, and we're still on track this year, Joey. 4 weeks in, leading the competition still is Mitch Brown. He kicked 4 on the weekend for Parkdale's Vultures senior team. He's on 26. Oscar Slizzers, who keeps kicking goals for Fitzroy's under-19s, he booted another 6 goals. He's up to 23. 1 goal back to 22. Charlie Abbott, who booted 5 for Scobbs under-19s, he's on 22. Will Hart goalless this week. At 6 goals for Paul Carricher from Therry Panola. He's on 19. Sam Grimley from Uni Blues booted 3 on the weekend. He's on 19 as well. So 26 for Mitch Brown, 23 for Slizzers, 22 for Abbott, 20 for Hart, 19 for Carricher, and 19 for Grimley. In the VAFA women's competition, Georgia Harris from Port Melbourne Chargers booted another couple of goals. She's up to 12, and Tessa Bowden sits on 10. Let's talk tips. Under-19 Premier in the books with Lockie and Sench. We'll get their results next week. And now it's tips time for Matty Donald. I'm not sure these numbers seem to...
Must be a typo there.
Add up there, yeah. Premier Women's, you picked 3 out of 5 for the weekend. Braden booted 5.
Oh, no, that's
5.
That's
5 out of 5 for you again, Braden. 16 out of 20 you've got so far in Premier Women's this year. It's a pretty good performance.
I wish Matty was doing the same with his Premier B report.
Well, Premier B, he got 1 out of 5. Matty's got 6 out of 20 so far for the season. Our resident Premier B reporter has picked 6 out of 20. You know too much about it. That's the problem. You're thinking too much. It's like people that put their tips on Monday or do all their tips of the year in advance, and then you look and find out they're winning the tipping comp.
Yeah, no, I'm overthinking it. I think I've got to just strip it back and just go back to basics this
6
week.
out of 20 for you in Premier B. Braden's got 11 out of 20. And then Premier Men's on the weekend, you tipped 3, Braden tipped 2. So overall for the season, Braden leads by 8, 39-31. So Braden, you'll tee off again first. You'll have the honour here. We're going to start with Premier Women's, which seems to be your specialty. You've picked 16 out of 20 so far this season in Premier Women's. That's extraordinary.
I'll take it. Great.
Well, who's winning this weekend? Please tell us, because Matty will probably just copy yours.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Start with Premier Women's, gentlemen. Only 4 games now here on for Premier Women's, of course, because it's a 9-team competition with Willie CYMS dropping down to Premier B. So whoever Willie was playing in the fixture will now have the bye. So this week it'll be West Brunswick. The Magpies will have the bye. Let's start. Braden, you're up by 8, so you've got the honour. You can tee off first. Q versus Westbourne, 9:20, Victoria Park.
I'll take the Bears.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Q here in this one, Jace.
Old Brighton versus Old Scotch.
Old Scotch should be too good.
Yeah, Old Scotch.
St Kevin's versus Caulfield, 2 p.m. at Rigetti.
Game of the round, I think, Matty. This one, I'm going to go the Fields.
Yeah, I've tipped Caulfield in this one, but yeah, this is going to be the toughest one to pick of all the ones that are really tough at the moment.
And the final game, Old Geelong versus Fitzroy, 2 p.m. at Como Park.
I'm going to go Fitzroy. They've impressed me since this year.
Yeah, I've tipped Fitzroy too.
Are you just sitting on on Brayden's tips now to make sure he doesn't get any
no,
further
no,
advance?
no,
It's not a bad strategy.
Yeah,
It's sort of like playing 3 men behind the footy and just making sure you don't get further behind.
Yeah, no, I've given up on closing ground. I'm just trying to save face at this point.
Fair enough. Premier B, round 5 action. Brayden, you go first. Collegians versus Old Ivanhoe.
I think you've got to go Collegians.
And I'm just going to send a message here to coaches, players, any supporters of Prem B. If I say your team is going to win this weekend, panic.
Just apologise in advance.
Just fair warning, it's not going to work out too well for you. So, Old Ivanhoe, you're in luck because I've tipped Collegians here to win this game.
D. Larcell versus Beaumaris.
Oh, well, let's see which coach rocks up. Tommy Hyland might be coaching Carlton with the news that's come through this morning. I'm going to go D-Lar just.
He's got 100% success rate still, does Tommy Hyland, acting coach. I'm going to tip D-Lar too.
Old Melburnians versus Old Geelong.
Oh, another tough game. Old Melburnians are obviously coming off a great win, but I reckon they'll get the job done here against Old Geelong, who are just missing some key players at the moment.
Yeah, I've tipped Old Melburnians too.
Ajax versus Willie CYMS.
I think I'll go Willie.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Williamstown as well.
Do I even need to ask you? I'll just write down whatever Brayden's asking.
I'll jump in if he
Old
says
Carey
something
versus Old Camberwell.
Oh, again, I know we make light of the fact that Matty's struggling here, but these games are genuine 50-50s. But Old Carey will be filthy that they dropped a game that they probably shouldn't, and they're too good of a side to drop another one, I think.
I do like the Panthers. Yeah, so I've gone with them too.
To Premier Men's, William Buck Premier Men's, we kick it off with the grand final rematch, our SEN match of the day on SEN and VAFA TV. You'll be out there at Camberwell, Old Scotch and Old Brighton. 2 teams coming off a loss.
Very rare sort of thing for both of them to be coming off a loss. I'm looking forward, but I'm just going to follow Brayden's lead at this point, so I'll get him to tip first.
Marcel Bruins, men, they'll be fired up, and I think they'll be a bit too good, as we touched on. Old Scotch missing a couple, but again, don't be surprised if the Cardinals spring a bit of a surprise.
It'll be a reasonably hard-fought game, but I've backed the Tunners.
Another blockbuster at Melbourne Uni. Uni Blues versus Old Zabs.
Matty, I'm going Old Zabs here, and I imagine you might follow.
Yeah, you sort of mentioned last week that if Uni Blues, if we're to really trust them, if they're fair income, that they've got to win those sort of games that they weren't able to against St Kevin's. I've tipped Old Zabs. They had that loss to the Tees, but just in the last fortnight, they look like they've got things motoring again.
This game could be anything. There's so much star power on both
Yeah.
teams. Both have got players that are able to just rip the game away from the other in a hurry. We obviously know about Grimley and Stewart. And then on Zab's side now, they've got a bunch of ex-AFL talents and the likes of McIsaac up forward as well. This could be a phenomenal game.
And what I find really exciting, what are we going to learn about the Blues, as we touched on, against a quality opposition? But what do they take away from that third quarter? They're up by 5 goals, and do they have another gear if they get in that position again to put the foot down and really send a statement with an 8-9 goal 10 win?
Yeah. Or conversely, at least put the shackles on Zabs if they start to come back at them and, they're in the same position they were when St Kevin's got on top of them late. St Bernard's versus Uni Blacks at the Snake Pit.
Oh, I'm going to go Uni Blacks, yes. The Snow Dogs, I'm sorry, you've let me down the last 2 times I've tipped. Yes, so win me back, please.
Oh, he's off the Snow Dogs. So the Uni Blacks, we've sort of touched on it. The 1-3 record is not truly reflective of how they've played this season, and I think they can get 2 on the bounce here.
Old Trinity versus Old Haileybury, the last 2 Premier B champions head-to-head, both in some form.
I think the Bloods, they're up and going, and I like when the youth have got a bit of excitement going because they are very, very hard to stop. The struts up, the attitude, and just good ball movement. This could be a genuine 1990s shootout.
Well, here's a chance for Kiss of Death Donald to strike. I've gone Old Trinity. Sorry, Donald, McDonald and Tees. And I really love what they've done so far to start the year. They've played with real dare coming up from Pembrey. It's hard not to be captivated by it, and I've gone with them again this week.
They're playing wonderful football. Could they win 4 in a row in the final game of the weekend? Caulfield Grammarians, can they bounce back against St Kevin's at home?
I think they're going to struggle. St Kevin's found their best last week, and look, I'm looking forward to watching Doug Kerr just develop throughout this season. He seems like a real find.
Yeah, he's coming in, had a big impact very early on. I've tipped St Kevin's here, so that means Brayden will extend his lead to 9.
Something like that. You've gone almost exactly the same right the way through. A good defensive mechanism from you.
I should have started doing this in round 2.
So 1 month down of season 2026, so much more to look forward to. And in fact, it starts this weekend. Remember last year, Brendan Favola pulled on the boots for Masala in the VAFA out in Dandenong. Massive crowd turned up. Well, Fev's doing it again this Saturday for Ely Park. The Ely Park Sharks taking on St Mary's Salesian in 2/3 Division 3 action at Whitehorse Reserve from midday. So if you can get along to Whitehorse Reserve in Box Hill, watch the game, be there in person. If you can't, join us on VAFA TV, live stream action from midday. Ely Park versus St Mary's Salesian. I think Fev took Mark of the Year in the game last year for Masala, so anything's possible when the big Fevolution pulls the boots on.
No, it's really exciting. And with Dave Hughes at his feet as well.
Dave Hughes playing, and the halftime entertainment, if you don't mind, Amy Shark.
Oh, I mean,
well, it's the Ely Park Sharks.
Yeah, no, there's something for everyone. Hughes is recovered from the broken ribs he sustained last year, and Feb, one of the great goal kickers of the 2000s. Remember growing up that time, he was capable of just about anything. So it should be a terrific occasion on Saturday.
Wonderful showman, Fev. He's a wonderful footballer too. As we mentioned last year, thousands of people were out at Masala. It was a wonderful day. So if you can get out to Whitehorse Reserve this Saturday at midday, do so. If you can't, join us live on the live stream on VAFA TV on the VAFA website from midday. Well, that's it for the first month of footy. So much more to look forward to. We'll catch you next week and break round 5 down for you right here on For the Love of the Game.